Tiffany,
And I'm Kelly.
and we're your revenue insiders. We are so excited about today's guest. We have Jeff Rosset. He's one of those people who has been in the trenches of B2B sales and revenue for the last 20 years, has built a community around it in a way very few people have to date. You founded Sales Assembly back in 2017, which is really a peer community for sales leaders. And now you're talking a lot about AI, which is what Kelly and I found really exciting, and not just playing around with prompts, but actually building workflows in it. We've been spending a lot of time on that too. And so we're excited to talk to you about what that looks like in real life. We want to pick your brain on some questions on what's working or not working. And so welcome, Jeff, to the Revenue Insiders.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's awesome to be here. Appreciate the invite, and yeah, looking forward to jamming.
I've seen you on LinkedIn for a few years now, and you have great thought leadership out there, always fun ideas. And recently you had a post about Claude and how you had made the shift over to Claude. And I would love to hear why you made the shift, and then what are you using it for? Tell us all your secrets.
Yeah. So I've, as somebody involved in tech and just, life overall, I've gotten pretty into the AI wave over the past couple of years. And like most people, I started off by using ChatGPT pretty regularly and started to dabble in, many of the other platforms that are out there, Notebook LM and Google AI Studio and, all the rest. And I feel like ChatGPT was kind of my go-to thought partner and resource to execute on, building plans and putting together custom GPTs, for our business. But, it just wasn't really built for the enterprise. It wasn't really built for B2B. There were a lot of aspects that made it a little difficult or clunky. And I feel like Claude, over the course of 3 or 4 months, just made some pretty significant strides to better serve the business community. And you obviously can't open LinkedIn and scroll a couple of times these days without seeing a couple of posts somehow related to Claude, and just started poking around and got a little bit more familiar. And now, it's totally replaced ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT now to like take pictures of a broken toilet in my house to ask it how I go ahead and what part I have to order on Amazon, because it's really good for for stuff like that. But anything business related, it's Claude all day long. And I think part of the reason why is, the LLM and the reasoning, and for the most part, it's fairly on par with what you get from a lot of other LLMs, but just the utility of it with the skills and the co-work aspect. I haven't really dabbled too much into code, but that's obviously a bear as well. And it makes it really easy for myself and my entire team to collaborate and to get things done a lot quicker by using the different functionality that they've put together in a nice way.
Kelly and I have been a big fan of Claude over the last few weeks. We decided that's our LLM of choice for the work that we've been doing around the Revenue Insiders. And so we've been digging in as well into like the co-work and skills specifically. And I've used ChatGPT for a while now, and it is remarkably different than how you build GPTs or even utilize them. But we are still getting our feet wet and kind of like fumbling through how we build things out. We had like a whole plan to build a whole series of skills. We ended up only building 2 because we were lost along the way. I'm curious, like, as you've dug into Claude, what does a typical interaction look like? How are you thinking about utilizing it to get the most out of it in that like B2B setting, and not that, help me fix my toilet or tell me what to say to my kid to make them eat their dinner tonight?
Right. Well, if you figure that one out, let me know, because AI or humans, we can't figure that one out either. So I think what I learned early on working with Claude, and I'll take it, Claude aside, any AI tool, it's only as good as the way that you set it up, right? And I think that's probably a big miss that a lot of people have, is they think it's just like this magic thing that comes out of the box that you can just flip on and automatically knows everything about everything, and it could produce exactly what you want. But that's not the case. Like, LLMs are really good at executing the specific task in which you give it, but it's only going to operate within the boundaries that you set for it. And so when I started really getting serious about building within Claude, I had a vision for a lot of the types of things that I'd like to be able to leverage it for within our business. One of which is taking our incredibly small team of 7 people and allowing us to produce work that would mirror a much larger organization. What are some of the net new outputs that we could produce? It's not just about how do we save 10 or 15 minutes on this task or that task. It's about how do we go about building and delivering something for a customer that in with our constraints as a small business, we simply would never have the opportunity or ability to do that ourselves. And the way that I approached it from the very beginning was I started off by building very hyper specific personas, or you could call them AI employees if you want,
Mm.
that all serve a very specific purpose, that all have a very specific background and persona. So as I'm interacting with Claude, it intelligently will tap the different AI employees that I've built to contribute on projects, to add advice, to pressure test certain things. And it's almost like an AI team approach, because one skill that I build or one thread within Cowork is not going to get me all the complex things that I need done, because again, AI is not magic. But if I can combine 6 or 7 very hyper specific skills or workflows into one strategic project, it allows me to produce the output that I'm looking for. And it's not only that, I actually started by building a skill whose job it was to help me build the other skills.
Oh, nice.
Claude actually comes out of the box with like a skill building skill. So it helps you to build the first couple of skills. But I took it one step further and I said, I want to build a roster of AI employees to help us do very specific things within sales assembly. Build me a skill that will help me then build those employees. And the skill that I built for that purpose was much more intentional and specific than the out of the box skill building skill that Claude comes with. And as far as doing an incredible amount of research on the internet to build the persona, so it's not just me uploading 3 job descriptions and saying, I want you to build me an employee based on this background. Like, that's very surface level. It did a lot of research. We put a lot of testing in place so it would give fringe use cases to the persona and say, if you were faced with this fringe use case from a client, how would you react to it, or what would your analysis be? And it would then grade itself on the answers that it would give. And anyway, this entire process got to the point where I was very, very confident that these skills or these employees that I was building were very, very hyper specific to what I needed. And that's when I then started down the journey of saying, okay, now let me take my little army that I've built and start to produce the type of work that we want. But I had to lay that foundation first.
So, who's your favorite new AI employee?
It's there. I've only just started to scratch the surface. I think I have like 7 or 8 that I've built at this point. I probably have a roadmap of another dozen or so that I'd ultimately like to spin up at some point when I get around to it. But I do have one that I built who's all focused on customer and product marketing, which
Mm.
be looped into just about any project or anything that I'm building with Claude, because everything that we do, if it's client facing, there's a product marketing and there's a customer marketing component, no matter how strategic or whatever. And we don't have a marketing team at Sales Assembly. And I try to dabble as best I can to help out with our marketing, but I'm not a marketing expert as well. So to have this resource just automatically get looped in when I'm building a project plan or putting together an executive summary or starting to build a specific workflow, to have that to pressure test around, like, what are my clients going to think and how would this resonate with the other things that we're already emailing them about. It's just like an incredible helpful resource.
It's so interesting. There was Kelly and I were talking about this just this last week. There was a article going around where Anthropic had noted that all white collar jobs will be gone in the next 18 months or replaced by AI. And it's a little bit jarring. And I think for people who don't interact with AI, maybe even more jarring or like fear mongering in it. But I'm curious, now that you're building these employees, do you see yourself growing the people at your company to also take on those types of roles, or do you feel like you will just grow kind of the AI skills that you have in your remit?
Yeah, everyone's got a lot of opinions on like the future of knowledge work and white collar work when it comes to AI. I view it less about, building capabilities within AI to replace employees. And I'm more of the camp where the things that we're building are specifically intended to make our human employees more efficient, more effective, more productive. Um, every every moment that myself and my team can spend on strategic work or client facing work, which means a lot of the back office or administrative or non-client facing stuff could be accelerated or replaced by AI to allow us to do the stuff that only we as the humans can do. I think that's the way to go. And when I think about 6, 9, 12 months out, we're going to continue to add headcount to our team. We just made an offer to another human being who's going to be starting with us in a couple of weeks. And so we're going to continue to grow our roster of employees in that sense. But we're very intentional with who we bring on to work here. And if we can continue to supplement their work with the right resources and skills, from an AI standpoint, I think it just makes each person that works here that much more effective and productive. And again, and that's, in a services world, different from software, even though that's the world that I play in. We work exclusively with software companies, but we're not building software. I think the way that AI is impacting software companies is different than the way that it will impact services companies, because for a services company, it's still very reliant upon the interaction with the human being and the person that's delivering the work. And not to say that there isn't the human component within a software business, of course there is, but so much of the AI is being applied to like the coding and the engineering behind the scenes versus a services business. The more that you could fuel the deliverables that you have to your clients so you could be a better resource as a human being for them, I think that's really what's going to set so many companies apart. And we're going to see this chasm continue to grow of the companies that have adopted AI and they're using it to their advantage to produce better work for their customers and to make their human employees more effective versus the ones that don't. And I think that the value that they're able to deliver is going to get passed by the ones that are using AI.
Okay. So I want to play on this angle that you're talking about a little bit, because you're wearing you're known for your I Love Sales hat. And you're wearing it right now. And a lot of what you do is the training of reps and sales teams. And we continue, and I see this a lot, that sales teams need different skills in the world of AI. And what you focus on from a training perspective is changing. So when you're talking to your customers, these large tech firms, smaller tech firms, what skills are they focused on the most right now with their teams?
Yep. It's a good question. I don't think that the answer is not going to be too thought provoking. I don't think it's very much different than it was years ago. So if I look back at the last, call it 3-4 years, ever since like the beginning of when AI started to come in, the skills are still the same. What makes an account executive effective, or what makes an account manager on the post-sales side, at the top of their game, is not incredibly different than what it was in 2021 or 2022. I think that the areas that have been focused on more by the enablement and sales leaders and the RevOps leaders whom we work with that hire us to work with their are the skills that these are the things that are not easily replicated by AI. So for example, you could use AI quite a bit for, crafting better emails or coming up with better subject lines. So if our business was based around training reps on how to write better emails, it would be a little bit more difficult today than maybe in years past. But skills like deal management, so like how do I continue to move the deal along when I'm working with 11 stakeholders and a large buying committee, and I sell a commoditized product and I'm selling it to the enterprise. You have to have the right skills in order to know how to progress those deals along. That AI is going to be able to support you by helping you to create a business case, for example, but it's not going to advise you necessarily on how to network your way through into the C-suite in order to get the buy-in that you need to get the deal closed. Skills like complex selling, skills like negotiation, and knowing what lever to pull at the right time and how to approach these conversations when you're on a Zoom, staring across from 3 decision makers that are trying to determine whether or not they're going to be able to close this deal by the end of the quarter. So these are skills that have always been present within, revenue roles within B2B software companies or companies of any sort. And those are the ones that I think are just continuously being focused on by our clients, because you could use AI to help with a lot of things, but if you can't connect with the right people and you don't know how to intuitively break through the noise and move deals along and instill confidence in your buyer and show that you understand their pain points and can have those value focused conversations, you're going to really struggle with closing or renewing revenue in 2026.
I love that. I share a similar perspective. Like skills is going to be like the most important thing that we like people skills. Like that's where like we're going to have so much focus because systems are just going to keep popping up and you're not building these big architecture systems that everyone needs to like deep work needs to go into them. Like you're all these AI tools are just game changers for the RevOps world, but also for how we think about the sales teams interacting with tools. I've come across like a number of different people that are in different levels of how they use AI. There's definitely the people that are terrified of AI. Like they still don't use it anywhere in their regular day to day. Most of those people are probably not in the tech world to begin with, but they might have sales jobs elsewhere. And then you have like the casual users that are asking, you know, how to get my kid to eat dinner, or how do I fix this toilet? Make me this funny image. And then you start to get into like these like B2B or advanced like workflows of, you know, help me do my work, help me do this task, help me write an email. More advanced is like build this solution for me. How have you seen people or how have you even like evolved yourself along that AI roadmap to really build into this like I think pretty advanced use of like individual Claude in your instance of taking scripts and skills and building them out even further? What does that journey look like for you?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a good question. I think everybody is on their own kind of pace with AI, right? And, I think we play in a world where we feel like, the human race is far more advanced around AI than it probably is because we deal with software companies and, software companies are probably at the leading edge of adopting AI within their day to day versus if you were working in a totally different industry, like you might have a very, very different perspective on, um, how commonplace it's become in the daily work. I'd say for me, over the past 2 years, I've made the transition from using AI. I'm trying to think of the right way to put it, but like when I need something, I would go tap. Like I would open up ChatGPT or open up Notebook LM and say, I need to go work on something. Let me initiate a conversation with an LLM or let me tap into this point solution and get a very specific task done and then move on to the next thing. And it was very siloed with the work that I was doing. It was like, I have this problem that I have to solve, or I have this task that I have to go accomplish. Let me start it soup to nuts, and I can use AI to help me with it. And then I'm going to stop and I'm going to go move on to something else. And I might use a completely different tool or resource for whatever happens to be next versus the way that I'm using it now. And granted, this is made possible by the foundation that I've already built within a platform like Claude, but it's not only Claude. You could build the foundation that you work with in a lot of different tools. Is I've raised the starting point for myself from starting from ground zero every single time that I have to do something to having built this layer of these different skills and these different workflows where I'm starting from second base when I begin a project or I begin a conversation versus having to start from scratch. And I think that fact alone, based on the skills that I have and the training that I've done and just my knowledge of how things work, and then, oh, by the way, connecting Claude to the other tools that I use on a regular basis, like HubSpot and Canva, so on and so forth, it's allowed me just to say, I'm going to go from starting this project to finishing it a heck of a lot quicker than I would have before. And the work's going to be better because it's bringing in things, it's bringing in knowledge intuitively that I would have had to start from scratch every single time. And I think that's the biggest evolution that I've probably made is the speed in which I could accomplish things and the quality of work just because I'm not starting from square one every single time.
I agree with you. Often find that like Claude is my strategic thinking partner. And so instead of spending time formatting a slide, I'm saying, what am I not thinking about that I should be? Or what I would have thought you would have done it this way. Why did you do it that way? And then really having a conversation back and forth and making yourself think differently.
Yeah. I mean, an example going back to like the employee, like imagine you're sitting in a conference room with your team. You have 5 people that you're having a strategic meeting with. You wouldn't go to each specialized person and tell them, I want you to consider these 3 components. Tell me what your feelings are about them. You would say, hey, Mary, what are your thoughts on the strategy in which we're laying out? And you would let them, based on their experience and based on their background, start to share with you the red flags or the things that might need to be peeled back a little bit further, or the areas in which seem to be the best opportunities versus the worst opportunities. They're not going to rely on you to tee them up with the things that you need to think about. And same thing goes with a tool like Claude. You could just open it up and say, help me think through XYZ, help me build a plan for this, that, or the other. Or you could say, here's what I'm thinking about, tap these 3 employees and help me start to brainstorm the direction that I should go. And because that's the way that you would work with the 3 employees that you had on your team if they were human. Right. And I think when people start to interact with it in a way like that, the results that you get are just a lot better because the AI is not confined to my brain. It's not only trying to solve the problems I'm teeing up for it. It's thinking holistically about everything that it should consider based on the background in which I've built for it.
Yeah. And in that world, have to, it's something I've seen, I guess I've noticed from others who I'm working with side by side who are also using AI. When AI doesn't give it the answer they want, they back off and just go a different approach or use a different tool. But I actually find, I'm curious if you do this, I often say, I disagree with you. That's actually not, I think, the answer, and here's why. And that's where I think it gets so much better, is when you really let it understand how you're thinking and where you're coming from and your own point of view. Do you do that?
I do. I do push back because AI tends to tell you what you want to hear to
Totally.
give you warm and fuzzies because I think, just, psychologically it allows you to then want to come back again because you get that endorphin ride. Hey, somebody agreed with me, right? But yeah, I do push back and I do ask, share with me the red flags or tell me what I'm not thinking about. Something else that I started doing many, many months ago is I'll take like a project plan that I build for myself. Used to be in ChatGPT, now it's in Claude, put together an executive summary, and then I'll pop it into Notebook LM if you're familiar with Notebook LM, and I'll have it produce for me a podcast based on the critique feature. So the podcast will be 2 people kind of picking apart my project plan, and it'll be in a podcast so I could like listen to the recording as I'm out for a walk with my dogs. And it's just a different way for me to think about what I'm working on. So I build the plan in Claude. I pop it over to Notebook LM with the intention for them to tell me what I'm not thinking about or what's wrong with it. I could listen to it in a different medium. I come back to my desk, I take some notes, I go back in Claude and I apply some of the ideas that Notebook LM gave me. And it's just like this continuous process. Because if you take the LLM's word for it, you're going to be in trouble because it's not always right. And it definitely doesn't think all the way through things unless you really train it and prompt it to.
I love that. I'm going to go do that this afternoon. So thank you for that.
It's such an interesting way to use multiple tools too, like to have the different perspectives, which again, like is the important part of all of this. You don't just take things at face value. I think that's one of the dangers here. The other one that I feel like, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Jeff, but AI is starting to make LinkedIn be a little bit of like a series of landmines in your posts. Like there's so many things that are just, people are using AI to write and not think about what they're saying just to get the clicks or the visibility or whatever it is that they're searching for on that LinkedIn algorithm. Do you use AI? You mentioned marketing. Are you using it as part of your social strategy? And what are your thoughts on how you avoid kind of just becoming a bunch of AI slop in your LinkedIn feed?
Yeah. No, I don't really, I mean, I'll use it for like ideation of, something that I might want to talk about, but I'm not having it like craft posts for me and then I'm just copy and pasting. I'm sure there's no doubt a lot of people that do that. And hey, like to each their own. That's not the way that I like to present my thoughts and my brand in the public sphere. I do think that, a year from now or 6 months, whatever, it's going to be really interesting because so much, I heard a stat a couple of months ago. Obviously, it's like significantly outdated, but some incredibly high percent of the information on the internet was already AI generated. And this was months ago. So as every day that goes by, like more and more blog posts, more and more websites, more and more stuff that the AI that LLMs are training itself on, they're training themselves on AI generated content, and then that's going to fuel more AI generated content until we reach the point where it's like, who the hell knows what's been written by a human and what hasn't. So I have no idea how that's going to ultimately play out, but it's just kind of an interesting dynamic to the way that thought leadership and content is being produced. And I think as far as like how do you prevent the slop, that's just a personal preference that people have to have. But I'm not somebody that's going to sit here and yell, be yelling at the clouds and get off my lawn about the fact that every single word that somebody publishes has to be like original and you can't leverage AI. Like, no, that's silly. Of course you could leverage it to clean things up, to better fit grammatically with in which what you're trying to talk about, make your thoughts sound better. But I think if it's purely just like cut and paste out of a chat window, that's where people get into trouble.
So I know you are partners with Sam Sales, who I fangirl over, and you share posts back and forth, or you connect on LinkedIn. And obviously Sam is known for her LinkedIn strategy on sales. I'm just curious, what's your perspective of how important LinkedIn is for B2B sales right now and where you think it's going to be in 6 months?
Yep. So I think it obviously just depends on the ICP in which you work with. If you're providing a product or a service to an ICP market that is active on LinkedIn, I think it's an incredible resource. Our business, because we target CROs, VPs of sales, heads of enablement, heads of revenue operations of B2B software companies, like LinkedIn is where a lot of those folks hang out. So we spend a lot of time on LinkedIn with posts, with DMs, with all types of stuff that we've built, a pretty comprehensive strategy over the years. It's turned into a really nice channel that helps to produce quite a bit of business for us. But if we were selling, you know, widgets to, small manufacturing companies in middle America, like if those people are not on LinkedIn, then LinkedIn's probably not going to be a very worthwhile channel for me to invest a lot of time in. So I think it really depends on your business and who you sell to. But if you feel like your buyer is on LinkedIn, it could be a really nice way to break through the noise. But it's not just about making posts. You have to have a strategy around connecting with folks, following up with people, sending them timely messages based on signals that you might be tracking, sending them the right types of thoughts and offers, engaging on their posts. It very much is, a part-time job managing LinkedIn. But if you do it well and your buyers are on LinkedIn, you could benefit quite a bit from it.
So I have one last question, and we'll start our wrap up, I think. But I'm curious, more open-ended, and this AI can be part of the answer, or maybe it's not. But what do you think is one of the things that most revenue leaders are still getting wrong, or now getting wrong in today's environment, and especially those things that they are not quick to acknowledge or admit that they're doing wrong?
That's a great question. Are you talking specifically AI related or just in
Could be
general?
AI, but I think in general is interesting too. I'll let
So
you.
your question was what are revenue leaders still kind of getting wrong right
Yeah,
now?
yeah.
Yeah. I think, as funny as it sounds, because we're so far removed from like the heyday of, the 2018, 2019s up to like 21, 22, when everything was just like rocking and rolling within
The good old days.
I think a lot of organizations are still either relying on playbooks that are still outdated, or they're trying to reinvent the wheel without tapping into, tried and true resources like peers and community. And, it's difficult to build in a silo, and it's also difficult to try to fit a square peg into a round hole. And organizations that are either trying to play catch up, so they're trying to build everything, they're just throwing a bunch of time, resources, and money at the new flashy thing that they read about on LinkedIn one morning when they're having their coffee. That's a little concerning. But also the ones that are still using the same outbound playbooks that worked in 2021, that they're just not possible to be able to produce the types of results today that they used to. And so you got to stay on top of change, but you also have to have the right awareness as to where to look for the right ideas and how to pressure test things. And you could go down so many rabbit holes and get so overwhelmed by all the thought leadership posts on LinkedIn around, hey, I just built this new playbook to 10x my outbound, and here's what you do on Claude. And so many people are experimenting with these things and they go nowhere because they don't have the right strategy or foundation. Just talk to other people that have been there and done that, and you probably save yourself a lot of heartache.
I had a conversation at dinner this weekend talking work. I don't know why we were talking work, but we were. And they were asking me what I do. And I said, I feel like I'm undoing a lot of what has been done over the last couple of years. And to your point, they do need to update their playbooks. They need to they update the way they sell from 2021. But so much panic happened in 22 through 26 that they just made a mess of things. And so oftentimes we're just rewinding that mess and trying to get people back to a level state so that they can focus on the things that matter, that have always mattered in sales.
Yeah. I don't know how many times I've said, like, this is no longer a 2017 economy. Like, we just have to,
Yeah,
like, be real with ourselves at this point.
we adjust to
Because I
that.
feel like everyone wants it to be. Like, you want to just, like, have the magic of IPOs that were happening then, and, like, the growth was easy. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of reimagining that has to happen in the B2B space for what success looks like today.
It's easy to be a peacetime revenue leader, that's for sure. Wartime feels a little bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so, sorry, Jeff.
I don't know. I was just agreeing with you. Wartime is a term that we use quite a bit in like 2023, and it's different. It's a different way that people are navigating things right now. But I mean, if you're not on top of things and doing your best to continuously innovate and stay on top of strategy, and not only thinking about your business but thinking about your clients' business. I spend just as much time thinking about my clients' businesses that I do mine, because if they're being impacted by AI and they're being impacted by the global economy, and they're being impacted by big enterprise layoffs, that's going to impact my business. And it's nothing that I could do about it, but I have to be able to think forwardly about different plans and contingencies and what it is that my clients might need in 6 months based on the direction that their business is heading versus where it is today. And you just don't want to get caught off guard.
I like it. Well, you're just so involved and you have such a great perspective. And I feel like the question I want to end with is different than our normal question, but is what should we have asked you that we didn't?
I like this version.
What should you have asked me? I'd say, I don't know, not the same answer, but how leaders should view AI. I've been thinking a lot about the fact that a phrase that I've had in my brain for many, many years, it's always stuck with me. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And I think that same idea applies quite well in the world of AI. Everyone's very quick to want to flip on tools and resources to do the things that everybody on LinkedIn is talking about is so easy. Oh, I implemented this waterfall enrichment plan via Clay and I hooked it up to Claude and I wrote these emails and boom, I'm setting 30 meetings a day by the time I wake up every morning. If it was that easy, everybody would be doing it and it would be working for everybody. But my guess is that's not working for you. And it's because it's not that easy. I like to think about things like AI in terms of like, what are the things that are difficult that everybody is not doing, but these are the things that are going to produce the best results for us in the future. It's not the flashy, I built this workflow on Claude or Clay. It's, really thinking strategically, like the good old days of like getting into a room with your executive team and putting things on a whiteboard and really thinking through how do we make movement on these specific areas for our business. And then how do we incorporate AI to make it a reality? And these are the things that maybe or maybe not are being discussed in other boardrooms and other meetings. And it's the hard stuff that nobody really wants to spend the time on or want to do that are probably going to produce the best results for you. And we've started to lean in quite a bit in those areas. And they're the ones that are adding the most value to our road, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's super interesting and it's a good grounding phrase. Like, if it's easy, everyone would be doing it. And I think it's a good reminder, especially when like it feels like there's a lot of things everyone's doing with LLMs of whatever choice, but like who's actually being like, what are the people who are successful at it? What steps are they taking and what background are they building?
Tiffany, I think we need to go look at our priority list and maybe
We always
reevaluate
do.
based on Jeff's perspective there.
I think we have some different skills we have to work on building, Kelly, for our Claude, for sure.
Well, Jeff, this was amazing. Again, I said I've been following you for a long time. I know a lot of our listeners follow you. I saw Lisa Honecker is one of your facilitators right now, who is a great friend of mine from High Spot. So, yeah, just an honor to have you on, and thank you for joining us.
Wow. Yeah. This is great. Yeah. She's one of our executives in residence and she leads one of our certifications. So she's amazing. And yeah, thanks for having me on. It's always fun to jam on AI. And I know there's a lot of noise out there with this and, lots of podcasts, lots of LinkedIn posts, lots of articles. But I think people do themselves a good service when they think strategically about how this works within their business. And it's exciting and crazy and stressful and confusing all at the same time, so we're in it together. Let's figure it out.
Jeff, where can everyone find you if they want to follow you, find out more about Sales Assembly? Tell us where they should look.
Yeah, of course, just LinkedIn. I'm not on Twitter or any other of the social media platforms. So LinkedIn's a good place for me. My partner, Matt, and I post pretty regularly. So we're always out there, sharing our thoughts and connecting with other folks. So yeah, that's the best place to find me. And if you run a revenue team and looking to upskill them with good, solid live skill development, Sales Assembly might be a nice fit.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.